Will I summit Mount Kilimanjaro? The higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. Cross the 5,000-meter mark. Everybody who goes to Mount Kilimanjaro goes there hoping that they will climb and summit Mount Kilimanjaro. There are those truths nobody tells you about Mount Kilimanjaro that I think you should know. And when you see the beautiful photos, you are actually enticed to think that everything is so easy. So what is the probability that you who is going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro will summit or not summit? I have a lot of things to tell you, and I'll be looking at my notes from time to time just to make sure I don't forget anything important. Please let's remember the expedition to Mount Kilimanjaro is just like any other race. In every race, there are losers and winners. Everybody hopes to be the one who wins. Everybody hopes to be the one who actually gets the gold medal. Nobody plans to be the last or the one who drops out of a race. But the reality is that for every race, there will be winners and losers. I really hope you will be a winner, but also be prepared to be a loser. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro when I was 54 years old, and I'm going to share with you those hard truths that nobody tells you. Thank you for watching this video. As for my returning subscribers, I'm grateful for you always coming back to watch my videos. And if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to this channel and give the video a like that it may be able to reach more people. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, which nobody really tells you about, and you must know if you're going to Mount Kilimanjaro, is altitude sickness. So in your expedition to Mount Kilimanjaro, be ready to contend with altitude. Remember, the higher you go, the thinner the air becomes, and also the less oxygen is available to you. I'm sure you've heard about altitude or mountain sickness. This occurs when your body does not acclimatize or adjust well to the high altitude or the low oxygen concentration. Important symptoms of altitude sickness that you should know about is the feeling of dizziness, vomiting, nausea, and even shortness of breath. Some people may experience loss of appetite, and almost everybody experiences these common symptoms of mountain sickness. So apart from these common forms of mountain sickness, we also have some severe forms of mountain sickness or altitude sickness. And these ones are characterized by accumulation of fluid in the lungs. You may have severe shortness of breath. You may even cough some pink or bloody sputum, and you may even foam. In extreme cases, the brain can swell. You may experience trouble even breathing, walking, and you're like in a confused state. The worst state is if you go into coma. Should these severe symptoms occur, you need to know that you need to immediately descend. And I would even say don't wait for the symptoms to be so severe, because you need to immediately descend and receive immediate evacuation. So altitude sickness is an important thing that you will face on Mount Kilimanjaro. When I went to Mount Kilimanjaro, I had heard about altitude sickness. However, I realized I knew too little about altitude sickness. Actually, what you know or what I was told about altitude sickness is so little, and maybe it was good that I didn't know too much. I was rather naive, and in our 7-day climb of Mount Kilimanjaro via Machame Gate, we were 29 hikers. The first 2 days were uneventful. On the third day, we woke up at Shira camp and began the trek to Lava Tower. And it is on this third day that you're supposed to acclimatize to the altitude. And Lava Tower is at approximately 4,600 meters above sea level, which is the same, approximately the same altitude as the base camp, that is Barafu, from which you will attempt to summit Mount Kilimanjaro. We had lunch at Lava Tower and rested there for about 2 hours. And it was here that some of my colleagues in the team of 29 began to feel a bit unwell. By the time we were leaving Lava Tower, they began lagging behind in the trek, but I didn't take it too seriously. I personally did not feel anything adverse. However, I had a bit of gas and bloating. So as we continued our trek from Lava Tower to Barranco Camp, two members were feeling a bit worse, but they made it to Barranco Camp, which is at a lower altitude. And normally the strategy on Mount Kilimanjaro is you climb high and sleep low. So actually by the time we got to Barranco Camp, most of us were feeling a bit better. At Barranco Camp, before crossing the Barranco Wall on the fourth day, it was decided that the two members who were feeling unwell needed to turn back. And from my experience, if you get sick at Lava Tower, chances are you will not summit Mount Kilimanjaro. I know it's painful, but it's just I let you know. As you go to Mount Kilimanjaro, if you get sick at Lava Tower and you get altitude at that, chances are you will not summit. So the two hikers out of 29 were actually returned to a lower camp, that is a Millennium Camp, which is at an altitude of 3,950 meters. A third member of the group was feeling unwell, but she was able to proceed on until base camp, that is Barafu Camp. However, she was unable to attempt the summit push. So with this, I thought this would be the end of what I would see of altitude sickness. But unknown to me, the worst was yet to come. So it is actually here at base camp that you begin to see a lot of what happens or the effects of altitude sickness. As much as there is altitude sickness on Mount Kilimanjaro, I want to let you know you can prepare in advance to reduce the effects of altitude sickness and even on how best to cope with it. You may not be able to completely overcome it, but if you prepare well before you go, then you improve your chances of mitigating or coping with the altitude with low oxygen concentration. There are also ways the groups going to Mount Kilimanjaro must prepare. No group attempts to summit Mount Kilimanjaro without oxygen. Normally, this oxygen is carried in cylinders. They are not so big, maybe about that size. And these cylinders are carried by summit porters to the summit, and they'll be with you throughout the day. On the summit night, there are extra guides who will help to carry oxygen to the summit with you. So no group ever attempts to summit Mount Kilimanjaro without oxygen. And also the reason there are extra guides is that if you become very ill, they will carry you down. And also another preparation, the way the TANAPA, that is Tanzania National Parks Authority, has prepared, is that they've ensured every camp on Mount Kilimanjaro has a helipad. This means that helicopters can actually land, evacuate you, and take off. So this is an important provision that has been made. And normally, one of the things that happens is that the teams, you'll find that the guides will continuously remind the hikers, climb slowly, pole pole, a Kiswahili word that means slow, slow. Because from experience, If you climb slowly, you reduce your chances of being overcome by altitude sickness, and you increase your chances of summiting Mount Kilimanjaro. I also noticed that there are cats on the trail. Cats are these, it's like a wheeled manual car. So if you get sick at a place a helicopter cannot land, they'll put you on that cat and drag the cat down to a helipad. Or if a cat cannot get there, then they will carry you down until you reach the helipad. So previously, before I went to Mount Kilimanjaro, I had climbed Mount Kenya about 11 months before. And I really did not have any serious difficulty with altitude sickness. So I went to Mount Kilimanjaro with the assumption that I will not have any challenge with altitude sickness. However, one of the things I say, the summit night on Mount Kilimanjaro humbled me. I remember on that summit night, we left Mount Kilimanjaro around quarter to midnight, that's 11:45 p.m. And all was uneventful until about 3 a.m. when members of my group began to fall sick. And they complained of headache, nausea, and even dizziness. So 5 members now out of the 26. Remember, 2 had dropped off on day 3. 1 had remained in base camp. Now out of 29, we are 26. So 5 of the 26 turned back at about 3 a.m. So out of our group of 29, we were now 21 people or hikers left on the trail. And most of us in this group had previously been to Mount Kenya in the recent months. And we really did not have any problem with altitude sickness at that point. Mount Kenya is just shy of 5,000 meters above sea level, which is quite high. So on that summit night, all was well until we crossed the 5,000-meter mark and things began to change. Our bodies knew what 5,000 meters above sea level feels like, but none of us had been to any other mountain higher or taller than Mount Kenya. So our bodies remembered 5,000 meters. At 5,000 meters or so, we were all hit, the 21 of us, by varying degrees of altitude sickness. And out of the 21 of us who are now on the trail, 2 were really hit hard, were quickly rushed down the mountain, and they were evacuated by helicopter. So now out of the 29 of us, there are 19 hikers left on the trail. Actually, when I heard that 2 of our members were being evacuated by helicopter, I had a panic moment because I could hear the guides in my group talking on walkie-talkie radios. Yes, they're okay. We are coming downhill. Yes, the helicopter has arrived. Yes, we are handing them over. They'll be okay. But I was not so reassured because they were talking to each other. But you know, this being walkie-talkie radios, and there are a few people on the trail, we could hear everything. And actually, I was a bit afraid for myself. I remember at Barafu camp, I had just 2 prayers. God, make my legs strong and make my lungs strong. And one of the things I can tell you, if your legs are weak, somebody can carry you. Somebody can even carry you uphill. If your lungs are strong, nobody can breathe for you. So that is the story of altitude sickness. So if you're liking this video, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. At this point, when our two colleagues were turning back at this 5,000-meter mark, I was also hit by a wave of nausea, and for the first time, I felt really ill. I also had bloating and gas, and I remember my guide advising me to vomit. This is a very difficult thing to do. He was like, make yourself vomit. Even put your hands in your mouth and vomit. I tried everything I could do, but the vomit would not come out. Anyway, we soldiered on, and gradually I felt better. But what I can tell you, that moment of the 5,000-meter crossing, it was such a bad feeling. I don't think I've ever felt so bad. I even lack the words to describe it. So after that, after a while, I felt fair. I was still feeling nausea, but not so bad. But all this time, my breathing was okay. So we continued on. As after another about 5 to 6 hours, we were now approaching Stella Point. And within 200 meters of getting to Stella Point, we met 3 hikers being brought down. And one of these 3 hikers was from my group. What I remember was that there were 2 guides, each was supporting her on each side, and they actually lifted her off her feet and ran downhill with her. And they didn't run, they were sprinting for dear life. Honestly, at this moment, I panicked. And especially when she said that she was feeling weak, it's like she wanted to lose consciousness. She was conscious, but she was saying, I feel like I want to just sleep. And everybody's telling her, don't sleep, let's go, let's go. Anyway, that was my close encounter with altitude sickness. What I can tell you is that when altitude sickness progresses to a certain level, you must quickly descend the mountain. The guides are very experienced, and they will know when you need to quickly descend. So please, while on Kilimanjaro, please listen to your guides. And just in case you need oxygen, they will always have oxygen. And really, I really respect the guides. Guides are very experienced and will know when you need to quickly descend. Please listen to your guides. If you cannot walk, they will carry you actually downhill. And if you can walk, they will support you. And please just obey, because this is a very delicate moment when you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So please give this video a like and give a comment down below on what you think about altitude sickness. So Mount Kilimanjaro has 3 summit points. First of all, Mount Kilimanjaro has 3 subsets of mountains. We have the Shira, which is extinct. We have Mawegi, and we have the Kibo. So the hiking normally happens on the cone that is Kibo. And there are 3 summit points on Kibo that hikers attempt to reach. We have Uhuru Peak, Stella Point, and Gilman's Point. So as we approached Stella Point, another wave of nausea hit me. And this time it was strong. Gosh, I just thought it would knock me out. But the good thing, my breathing was still okay. At Stella Point, we met more hikers that were coming down. They were breathing heavily, and some more hikers were being supported to descend. At this point, I thought, no, maybe I need to do something different. If you look at summit photos at Stella Point, you can see I'm still able to talk, which is one of the things they evaluate whether you are still okay. But at Stella Point, as we took our photos there, just by the crater, atmospheric conditions changed, the atmospheric conditions worsened, and it started to snow. And at this point, my guide and I made the decision to descend. So we sprinted down to about 5,500 meters above sea level, and then we started walking. So if you look back, out of the 29 hikers who had started the hike, 2 had been turned back on day 3. 1 did not attempt the summit push. 5 were able to attempt the summit push, but turned back at about 3 a.m. And then we have the 2 who were hard hit and were evacuated by helicopter. The member who was being brought down by 2 guides near Stella Point actually summited, but she was overwhelmed as she was at the summit and needed to come down quickly. So this means out of 29 hikers, 11 of us, or 11 hikers, were seriously affected by altitude sickness. And out of 29, for 2 it was so acute they needed to be evacuated immediately. And 10 out of 29, therefore, failed to summit. If you look at the success rate for our group, it was 66%. That is 19 out of 29. The success rate was 66%, and 34% failed to summit. This was against the expected 90-95% success rate. During earlier briefings, we had anticipated that 90% of us would summit or better. So we went to Kilimanjaro very confident, but the mountain has its own decisions and its times. What can you do to avoid or minimize altitude sickness during your expedition to Mount Kilimanjaro? I'll be answering this question at length in the next video on the Kilimanjaro series. Please keep watching my channel so that you may not miss this video, and see you in that video.